Welcome to The Freight Break with your host, Dan Lindsey, the podcast that cuts through the noise of the trucking industry. We're talking real conversations, real relationships, and real insight that keep the wheels turning.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to this week's episode of The Freight Break, your go-to podcast for all things valuable and profitable in the freight industry and the flagship podcast of the Broker Carrier Summit, the BCS Freight Network. I am your host, Dan Lindsey, and today I get to break it down with my friend Sean McGillicuddy. He is the Chief Revenue Officer of Tai Software. And speaking of Tai Software, let's kick it over to them for the intro.
Meet Tai Software's workflow automation, built to help LTL and FTL freight brokers boost productivity. Use custom prompts to automate repetitive tasks like status updates, carrier changes, and shipment alerts right in the platform. Manage operations with automated scheduling, carrier management, and real-time updates. Workflow automation removes bottlenecks, freeing you up to grow your business. Best of all, it's easy to set up and use. No coding or tech skills required. Choose your workflows and Tai does the rest. Book a demo today and see how Tai makes efficiency happen.
The Broker Carrier Summit is taking over Orlando, Florida, the 28th of October through 30th. Join the best in the biz for 3 days of networking, education, and real talk with the top minds in logistics. If you're serious about growing your business, this is the event for you. Lock in your spot now at brokercarriersummit.com or bcsfreightnetwork.com, where the future of freight takes shape.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to this segment of Breaking It Down. Today, we are breaking down automation, AI, and all things TMS with my good friend, Sean McGillicuddy, who also has one of the most awesome names in freight. Sean, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thanks for the name plug. I do. It is one that people remember. So I've been very fortunate with that last name.
Now, are you Irish or are you Scottish?
Irish. Yeah.
Irish. Okay. So I'm Scottish.
I've never had the DNA test, but my dad was like 99% when we did his. Yeah. So it's pretty up there.
Yeah. It's pretty high. Pretty high.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm Scottish, so we'll try not to have our wee bouts, if we will, on one of these calls. So
yeah, for sure.
Last time I saw you was TIA, right?
Yeah, and it's funny because that's like, it seems like it was just happened, but yet also really far away. It's like the year's gone by very fast, but that was also like, 5 months ago now or so. So yeah.
So fast. Well, Sean, you are the Chief Revenue Officer over at Tai Software, the flagship sponsor for our Freight Break podcast here. Thank you very much for that. So tell everybody about Tai. What do you guys do? If they don't know what you do, explain what you guys do.
Yeah, so we're a TMS provider exclusively dedicated to freight brokers that are doing full truckload and LTL. More recently, we have developed pretty much almost everything we need to start marketing it as a drayage platform as well. So that's kind of coming soon. A little bit of a preview. We have a bunch of folks doing that, but we really focus on trying to automate menial tasks, make it so brokers can book more loads per day, leveraging some AI tools to even enhance some of the tedious aspects of moving freight in order to make the human hopefully more human.
Gotcha. So how did you get into this? How did you get into freight? I like hearing people's origin stories. Most of them are accidental. So
yeah, I mean, so I guess it's kind of accidental. I had a friend who was selling trucking insurance to trucking companies, like commercial insurance. So, and obviously he got into it because that's what his dad was doing. And I heard it was a good way to make money. So, I started knocking on the doors of trucking companies up in the LA area, like outside of the Port of Long Beach and stuff. So did that for a little while. But I found insurance really boring. And I liked working with trucking companies.
Shocker. Insurance is boring.
Yeah. And I moved around a little. Like I had a company I started with that I spent about 2 years with, did really well. And then got recruited by another company to go build their trucking insurance program. But I just reached a point in my career where it was like, if I'm going to develop, I had to branch out into other insurance and I just liked working with the freight companies the most. So I started kind of just looking to put that aside and go find something more freight related. And I wanted to be more value add. I didn't like, like insurance is one of those things where, everybody needs it. And so like, why not buy it from me, or like, gain the trust. But it just wasn't like, nobody likes buying it, like you need it. It goes up every year. And I just really wanted to do something where I was adding value, where you don't necessarily need a software or our software, but I know that we can add value if we do. So I actually ended up with Tai by I was cold calling a bunch of like freight brokers, freight tech companies, and just trying to figure out if anybody was hiring. I was just trying to see what was out there. And Tai was just down like 5 minutes down the road from where I was living at the time. So at that time, it was under another name and it was under a different owner. So we had spearheaded a whole rebrand. And I basically spent most of my career in freight with Tai, in the software side. So from client success rep to VP of sales to now chief revenue officer.
Very cool. And you mentioned automation. You dropped something there though before you said automation that I want to really dial in on. So you are exclusively a software platform for full truckload and LTL brokers, but you're launching a drayage platform.
Well, we do actually have several customers doing drayage inside of Tai, and there's not a ton of companies out there. Like if you're a broker doing a lot of drayage, then there's not a whole lot of platforms out there. So we have companies doing it now, and we've made a bunch of enhancements over this past year. There's a few more things to finalize before we kind of like, truly launch it and start marketing ourselves that way. But, I guess you could consider this a little bit of a soft launch. I'd love to talk to anybody and figure out what else needs to be added to be competitive and meet the needs of the drayage freight brokers too.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you talked to Steve Talamo?
I don't think so.
Steve Talamo is a broker. Actually, he runs a carrier and a brokerage, I believe, out of Charlotte.
Okay.
And they do exclusively drayage. I will have to have you reach out to him.
Yeah, I've got my director of sales engineering is right in Raleigh. I could have him run out there and do a demo in person if you wanted to see it.
Oh, there you go. All right. Well, look at that.
Yeah.
BCS connections.
I love it.
Yeah. So question for you, because TMSs are a very valuable product for brokers and for carriers to have, honestly. I'm always shocked by the number of companies who operate in the transportation world without a transportation management system. That's like being in retail without a retail system. I don't understand how companies navigate it. So when you talk to brokers about what they should be looking at in a TMS, right? What are some of the things that you point out that TMSs add value to their operation?
Yeah. we should be hopefully making it so that one really talented person can do, if they're not using a TMS at all, I would assume they could do twice as much with any TMS versus no TMS, but we're trying to scale it even further. Most of the folks that gravitate to Tai are ones that are looking to grow and get rid of the menial stuff. So, you have, if you want to get in with larger shippers, you have to have good EDI connections to make, to get orders coming over automatically from their ERP systems, right? That has to be a given. But then you get a lot of emails too, as well. So you need an easy way to process those incoming spot quote emails and things like that. And so that's why we have our AI component with the email scraper and things like that. But you got to be able to price quickly in that spot quote market so that you can hopefully win the dedicated customer by doing a really good job on their spot freight. But then we gotta help, a TMS should help you make it easier to find load coverage, right? So you may have to use the load boards for a while on certain lanes that you don't really run, but your TMS should be able to help you aggregate all of that quoting information and scorecarding the carriers to make sure that you know who you like working with, keeping it nice and organized and making it actionable. Because one of the things that slows most brokers down is if everybody's just posting every load on the load board. And then you have guys in the office that are really savvy and they got their spreadsheet and those are the guys that don't need a TMS because they've been doing it forever. They just move so quick, but it's really hard to scale what they're doing if you don't have a TMS in place, because it makes it so that we can't like a less seasoned guy can't see what the seasoned guy is doing, right? They can't see what carriers does he work with, what kind of pricing does he get on these lanes, things like that. What makes a good carrier even, right? Like we need to give them full visibility so that the scale is there for them.
Well, and the visibility is one thing, and how do you bridge though as a software platform the knowledge disparity between somebody who say just comes on to a freight brokerage brand new, just out of college, first job. And then you have, the 30-year SME who still has all the spreadsheets, like you mentioned. He's got all the phone numbers memorized still, because that's what we used to do in the 80s and 90s, was memorize phone numbers, right? He knows all the things. How do you bridge that gap to where you're not leaving the industry veteran behind, and you're not doing everything for the new person so that they don't actually learn along the way? How do you do that?
It's a really good question, because that we see that a lot, and sometimes it's sometimes the veteran they don't necessarily, like I said, they don't always need a TMS. Sometimes when they look at a TMS and you show them everything they can do, yeah, it might be a little faster, but they're so quick, and to your point, it's all in their head. So they're really like, they're like, hey, I'm moving really fast the way I'm doing it. I don't necessarily need another tool. I don't necessarily want to go through learning how to do it this other way. I've been doing it this way for 20 years. So you kind of need, as an owner, I think you need to really convince that guy to help you with your business, your overall business vision. Because if it's only going to stay that way, then like if he's not open to kind of helping you get everything in one place, then he's going to kind of do his own thing, and you're almost going to have two different business units, like the seasoned guys and then the guys that we're trying to train through a program. But the ideal scenario is to take the really the veteran guy who knows how to do everything and give him an easy way to do his whole job in one place, where you actually can see what he's doing in terms of just like knowing what carriers he books with, how he goes about negotiating, how many quotes does he get from carriers before he picks one, why did he pick that particular guy on that lane, right? And then being able to see what's going on because you'd have to audit his whole inbox to find out how much back and forth there is between him and the shipper, him and the carrier. But if you can actually integrate that into one place, now he doesn't really have to change his job function in order for people to be able to see what he does, right? Because with Tai, we make it so the activity log shows everything, right? So, if he's open to being helpful to the new guys, and he just goes in and does his normal job, the managers can now train off of what he does. Like, so if I'm a new guy, I could go into the truckload quoting page inside of Tai, and let's say Jim's the veteran, right? I could look and go, well, okay, Jim booked this twice yesterday at this price. So I feel pretty confident that I know I need to get a quote back to this shipper within 5 minutes otherwise, because I'm low on his list. But so I'm trying to be quick to earn his trust. I can see Jim booked this yesterday twice, roughly around this price. Boom, I get a price on it. I get it back over to them. Now we get to see if I win that or not. But if it lives on a spreadsheet, it's really hard to train that new guy.
Yeah. Well, and so when it comes to things like machine learning and AI, obviously you want to use the veteran as the truth source, as the source of which they go to find best practices. But when it comes to what your customers want to automate, how do you walk them through automation? What are the top items that should be automated at a brokerage? Which ones do brokers want automated that they don't really need to automate? Talk to us about those.
Yeah, I would say there's a handful of things that I think have to be automated so that you don't miss opportunities. And then there's obviously just tedious stuff that you should try to automate just because it's a time waster, right? But the top thing that I think should be automated is, regardless of how the shipments are coming in from your customers, there's got to be an easy way to just build those shipments right in without somebody having to do data entry. Because then I can see my win-loss ratios on these, right? I can see how many opportunities I'm getting. So we've got the EDI, we've got you can import a list of shipments. You can set up our email tool, so we're scraping an inbox for all of the potential opportunities. If you can automate that, then you're just not going to miss any opportunity, right? Unless if you're too high on price or whatever, like, it is what it is, but at least you'll know, right? That's the big thing that I think sometimes brokers miss is, I don't know my win-loss ratio because I'd have to audit every broker's inbox to know how many opportunities I'm getting that I'm not winning. But then on the flip side of that, I think you should automate some of the outreach to your carrier network. You don't want to lose the personal relationships with the carriers that you like working with, but a really good way to enhance the relationship is to make sure they automatically are getting the freight that they want, or at least getting a first opportunity at lanes they like to run. So if you can aggregate all of the information for every quote that you get, you want to be if you get 10 quotes from 10 different carriers for one shipper's quote, right, on one lane, you want to be able to capture all 10 of those. It contributes to your data. And you want to make sure, I think those are two sides of the equation that are really like going to be paramount in the next 2 years to move faster in the freight industry.
I agree with that 100%. So one of the things I've talked to brokers about, specifically in the last 3 or 4 months, is if the AI or the automation can do it better than you, do it. Because the conversation is specifically when it comes to tech, AI, and automation and optimization is, well, what should be handled by the individual relationally and what should be handled by the technology systematically. And there are a lot of ways in which brokers drop the ball when it comes to communication with carriers. That's one of them is, oh, I got this update from my shipper customer. I should email my carrier. Well, then I have to go get coffee first. And then I have to talk to Phil. And then I have to browse and look for more shippers. And all kinds of different stuff. And lo and behold, it's 3:30 in the afternoon. I forgot to give my carrier an update. He's at the shipper. He's pissed because now he's there 3 hours early because the appointment got moved. That's a way in which I think, that's never happened before, by the way. That was just a random thing that I pulled out of thin air. But that's a way in which I think automation and AI can really help build trust and build relationships across the broker carrier divide.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think you just brought up the point of like trying to avoid human error is really where you want to leverage automation. So some brokers don't necessarily want to automate everything because I was talking about this earlier. Like we could technically automate. Email comes in, I quote it automatically. If they say yes, I kick it to a carrier automatically. I dispatch it, right? Like I even send the rate con out. Like all of that can be automated within Tai. But most companies would prefer that they have a human being, like just it gets teed up with a quote on it and that a human being looks at the quote to make sure it's accurate and then they hit send, right? So we're just automating the tedious front end of it, but you still want the human being with the experience to say, you know what I mean, to be able to say if it's like good quote or not. And then you also might just want to automate reminding me, right? Where like you just said, like get it to this carrier, like I might just want to make it so that there's a task that automatically gets created that I have to resolve within the TMS so that I just don't forget to get it to that carrier or I don't forget to send that email. And sometimes that's all the automation that brokers want. They still want their human being in there. They just don't want them to miss a beat on some of the reminders.
Yeah. Well, that brings up an interesting question too. So when you talk about automation, there are all these different ways in which to think about, the role of the individual, the role of the broker or the human being rather in the equation. Do you think there's a place for end-to-end full, soup to nuts automation, or is there always going to need to be a human element to the freight transaction?
I think the answer is some of your freight can and should be fully automated. Some of it. You probably have some dedicated customers. It doesn't mean that you don't have a relationship with them or you don't pick up the phone and make sure everything's going okay. And if anything, automation and AI should actually free up more time to do those specific things, like building a relationship and finding out if there's more business. But if you've got standard freight coming in and there's nothing nuanced about it and you know exactly what set of carriers you want to waterfall tender that freight to, there's not really any reason these days that couldn't be fully automated. I think we're still at a point industry-wide, though, where people would prefer to get like the human being. There's like stopping points for the human being to double check, make sure things are going well. But then the other side of that is there's always like, it's really going to be hard to completely automate, new accounts that you're trying to get your foot in the door on that have like nuanced freight, like stuff that's like, it's just not like that stuff is much harder. You're going to always need a human being to do that. But I think that's the point of like leveraging automation where it makes sense. And it's usually on the easier stuff, like automate some of the easier tasks that you could put any human being on, and then let your really smart human beings deal with like the real problems, like the potential fires or the nuanced stuff, or like when you can't get you don't have a network of carriers and you're trying to build it up and you got to actually make some personal phone calls to try and find a fair carrier to move that freight for you.
Right. Well, I think it's an important point as well. Just like you have brokerages that are in various stages of technological savviness, you have shippers who are in various stages of technological savviness, and the range I think is wider in shippers, because you still have shippers who are operating off of like a 1985 DOS matrix or dot matrix, printers and DOS systems, and and they don't automate. They don't need to. They have their people. They have their systems. Is there a way in which you can, as a broker, over automate and automate your way out of being able to relate to a shipper?
Yes, and I think we saw the digital freight brokers do that and not succeed doing it. And I don't want to name anybody specifically, but we saw that back in like 2022 when there was this huge push for like the digital freight broker model, and some really cool stuff came out of that because those companies kind of did push the industry forward on what automation was possible, right, in our space. But I think you can't automate building a relationship with a set of carriers that can help you be successful, or with the shippers that want to be able to pick up the phone and trust you, right? Like anything a broker automates should be all about freeing up a human being to be more human, right? Like a shipper does not, I mean, some shippers do, but like for the most part, if I'm a successful broker, I've got quite a few relationships with shippers where they know any time of day or night, if they call me, I've got it. Right. If there's a problem, they're going to know about it right away. And I'm going to give them peace of mind that like I've got it handled. And then if I want to be able to deliver that kind of service, I have to have that kind of solid relationship with carriers. Because if I'm going to move that person's freight successfully and they can always count on me, I better have a pretty robust network of carriers that aren't going to just bail because I didn't give them an extra $5 on the load, right, or whatever, right? Or I should always give the $5, right? But if there's if a carrier is, looking at, they could move your freight and they know they're going to get paid on time. They know that they're going to get more freight in that lane that they like running. They're going to get more times home in their own bed, right? Because of the way I do business with them, then they're going to be likely to want to take my freight, even if they could get a couple extra $100 over here from some broker they don't know, right? Or something like that. So you can't automate that part. And if you try to, I think right now it's a failing endeavor.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question and follow up to that. So the brokerages that you mentioned that went all digital, right away, do you think that the fact that most of them did not survive was a rebuke of the entire concept in general of fully automated digital brokerages, or was it kind of the market saying, too much, too fast, let's slow down?
I mean, that's a good question. And I guess I would probably say the latter. I do think maybe we can't, like the industry, the digital brokers probably came at them a little too quick, too much, too fast, and without enough thought on how are we going to maintain the peace of mind that we give them. If I'm a broker, that's really, I deliver this service that gives the shipper a peace of mind that I'm trustworthy, and no matter what happens, I got you covered on that freight. And so if I try to automate too much of that, and I think some of the digital brokers, what they did was, it was all about, like, some of them were just losing money. It was all about like kind of buying market share to a certain degree, losing money on freight in order to try and be profitable eventually. And then others just didn't have enough experienced freight professionals on staff, right? Like they had some that they started with that knew what they were doing, but then they went and hired way too many just brand new, never had a job in freight folks. And so they didn't have enough of like that balance to the whole thing. So even though the digital model could automate a lot, if you picked up the phone, I mean, anytime a shipper picks up the phone and there's something going wrong with your shipment and you have no idea about it and you're just like completely caught off guard and you kind of fumble with it, you've just now opened the door for that business going elsewhere.
Oh yeah, in a big way. Big way.
Yeah.
Well, Sean, thank you very much, my friend. It's always great talking with you. I will see you probably here in a few weeks at the Broker Carrier Summit in Orlando. Are you going to be there?
Yep, that sounds good. I'm looking forward to it, Dan. And thanks for having me on today.
Thanks for coming. You don't have any musical talents that are hidden, do you?
No,
No?
I wish I had something to pass on to my son, but I can't. I've always wanted to know how to play the guitar, but I don't want to learn. I just want to.
Okay.
I just want to already know.
You just want to automate it. You want to download it and just have and be able to do it. Right? I get it.
Exactly.
Well, if you do have some musical ability and you want to shred a guitar on stage in front of the best people in freight, I'm going to do a shameless plug for the Battle of the Bands at Disney Springs House of Blues, October 29th, the final blowout, loaded and rolling party of the Broker Carrier Summit in Orlando. be a part of it, be there. Sean, again, thank you very much, and I will see you very soon, my friend.
Sounds good, Dan. Thank you.
All right, everyone, thank you very much for breaking it down with Sean and I today. As a reminder, we are just a few weeks away from the Broker Carrier Summit in Orlando, so if you have not yet signed up yet, go to www.brokercarriersummit.com/events. Make sure to sign up. It is the best 3 days in freight. You will not want to miss it. You may find your next customer there. All right, everyone. See you in October. Take care.